Example 2. Arbitron, the rating service for radio audiences, categorizes U.S. radio stations in terms of the kinds of programs they broadcast. Here's a frequency table that summarizes the distribution of stations in a recent year. So it's just a regular frequency table. This tells us the number of stations with each of these formats. We need to identify the individuals, make a frequency bar graph of this data, and then make a relative frequency bar graph of this data. And then note any similarities and differences in parts B and C. For part B, we also need to identify the best measure of center. So, what do we have data on? We have data on U.S. radio stations. So that's part A. The individuals are U.S. radio stations. Looking back at some of our work here, categorizes U.S. radio stations in terms of the kinds of programs. So the things that we have information on are U.S. radio stations. So we need to make a frequency bar graph. The largest numbers of stations that we have seem to go up to about 4,800. So we need to decide how we are going to scale this. The smallest numbers we have are somewhere around the 800s. So let's make this a nice big graph here. And we have a bunch of formats that we're looking at. So we have our format down there. We're going to have our regular old frequency here. And again, we need to go up to around 4,800. So if I count by 500s, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 would get me to about there. And that looks pretty good to me. And let's go all the way up to 5,000 so that we know that will fit. We also have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 different categories. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I have 22 there, so we can use 2 boxes at a time for each format. I might write my names on a slant just to make it easier to read them or to write them. You don't have to do that, but it sometimes helps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. So our categories were adult, contemporary, and we had 2,536, so somewhere just above 2,500, right about there, and I'll put my vertical lines in a minute. Sports, there were 1,274 sports stations, so 1,500 versus 1,270 should be somewhere about there. Contemporary hits, we can start getting some of those lines. We had 1,012, so a little bit above 1,000. country. There were 2,893, so 2,500 would be about there, so 2,800 would be a little closer to 3,000. News, talk, information. There were 4,077, so just above 4,000 news radio stations or talk radio stations or other informational radio stations. Oldies down to 831, so just above halfway between 500 and 1,000. Religious. There were 3,884, so somewhere up around here. Rock stations. 1,636, so just above 1,500. Spanish language. We had 878 in that particular year, so again, somewhere kind of around here. Variety and other. We had to have the other so that anything that's not here is still counted as a radio station. So variety, we had 1,500-ish, so just about there. And other types of station, 4,800-ish would get us to about there. And that is example 2A.